You are listening to Seniors Junction podcast. Your hosts today, Namrata Bagaria and myself, Paul Merkley, co-founders of Seniors Junction. Our special guest today is Dean Henderson. He is the Director of Client Experience, Education and Innovation of the Dementia Society of Ottawa and Renfrew County. Welcome, Dean.
Thank you for having me.
Could you tell us a bit about yourself and your society?
I'd love to. I guess the most important thing to know about myself is that I'm an occupational therapist by professional background. As you'd mentioned, I'm the director of the Client Experience, Education and Innovation at the Dementia Society of Ottawa and Renfrew County. The Dementia Society is a nonprofit that supports caregivers and people living with dementia and their families. We have a team of experts that are called dementia care coaches, and they provide one-on-one support, education, system navigation, social and recreational programs to our clients, again, who are caregivers, care partners, and people living with dementia.
That's awesome. I think coaching is a very good idea to kind of help have a good point of contact between the content and the beneficiaries. So as he was talking, it was making an idea in my head. But before I deviate to that, I want to ask you, given that you work with a population which has very specific needs and is high risk for isolation, what has been your personal experience as a worker in this field on senior isolation?
Great question. And I'm going to add a little bit to my answer first to what you said originally about the coaching. And we do know that research shows that caregivers and people living with dementia do better, have better outcomes when diagnosis is made as early as possible, and both are supported and stay connected in the community. And so that's our job, is to help support people, whether you're the person living with dementia or the family or care partner or caregiver throughout throughout this experience. So we're there to be that go-to person along the way. Now, in terms of your question of social isolation, we do know that this past year and COVID-19 that the world has experienced has definitely shone a spotlight on social isolation and the challenges that people are facing with this. And in our world of dementia and caregivers, it's really been tough for our client population. Not being able to have access to the services, the support, the respite, whether that's from a friend or a family member or an activity or a day program that people previously used to attend, has been really challenging for caregivers and people living with dementia. And our community that we've stayed connected with over the past year and a half, and the clients, we have seen people decompensate over the year because of being isolated. So the person living with dementia, maybe they have decompensated a lot quicker than they previously would have if they've stayed connected and engaged and had all access to all of their the service that they did before COVID. And then the caregiver also, we're seeing experiences increased burnout and distress because they have less access to support.
I know I know from the experience of watching my mother and keeping track of her, she had Parkinson's disease, and so slowly had more and more cognitive problems, and then eventually had terrible problems. But I know that as she started to have difficulty with cognition, she dropped some of her social activities. She'd been a hand weaver and very active in the guild. They do different things together. They do shows, they do workshops. They're in touch with each other. But when she didn't feel she could weave properly, she dropped that. And she had been in a church group. When she didn't feel she could contribute in the way she wanted, she dropped that. So I wonder if you've seen things like that. Ultimately, she sort of fell off the cliff in a way with dementia, and she broke her hip. And as you know, people who break hips and enter the hospital with dementia seldom get out of it. And that was how everything ended up for her. Have you seen cases like that, thinking of a slightly longer term, and do you see that as part of the risk of social isolation?
Well, thanks for sharing your story, Paul. That must have been a rewarding but also tough experience to support your mom. So one thing that came to mind when you shared the examples of the meaningful activities that your mom stopped doing, is that that is also a warning sign for dementia, is that withdrawal from activities. And that could be from a number of reasons. One of the biggest reasons is stigma. There is still so much stigma around dementia across the world. And when you have some insight and you're noticing some brain changes, you really don't want people to know that you have some challenges. So the easiest thing to do is to stop doing that activity, whether that's going to a coffee club, a church group, or a weaving activity. Another reason could be is that activity is becoming a little bit too challenging the way it typically is. And one thing that we could do better at across is how do we adapt that activity to meet the skills and ability of individuals, whether you're living with dementia or not. And so like one thing, I forget where I was going with that, but is that there is we are, just as we are meant to move, our bodies are meant to move around. We're meant to be social, and being social often means engaging in meaningful activities. And so, just because you're living with dementia, people can and do live well with dementia, and it's about modifying the activities to meet their skills and ability. And participating with them is what we try to encourage and teach our clients that we support.
So we would say that the social connectedness and the shared purpose of the activities, of the meaningful activities, helps keep them in a better place, combats the progress of the dementia, gives them a better quality of life. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, we all, just like you and I, we're driven to do meaningful activities that we all find meaningful. So just because someone has a diagnosis of dementia doesn't mean that they are not interested in meaningful activities. And that if you do look at like sometimes the schedule of the care partner or caregiver and the schedule of someone living with dementia that they're supporting, the caregiver and care partner has groceries to get, meals to cook, errands to run, things to do around the house. And what does the person living with dementia have? Well, they're getting up, they're eating their meals, and maybe watching TV. And so what we're encouraging is like, we need to find what is that meaningful activity that they can do, and to give them purpose, whether that is helping with folding some clothes or doing some errands outside. We all need to have that purpose and meaning in our life, and sometimes with dementia that could be tying it back to who that person was decades ago. So what was their job that they did for their entire life? Maybe they were a professor or at a university, and maybe a meaningful activity would be, I really need your help, Paul, to go through all of these papers here and mark these assignments, because that is a meaningful activity that you did your entire life. Whether those assignments are true or not, it doesn't matter. Is it purposeful for that person living with dementia?
Yes, one of our ideas is that the resumption of prior activities can be very helpful for people, can help them feel purposeful and connected. And so we would also say the converse of what you just said, that social isolation and lack of purpose probably can accelerate the symptoms of dementia.
Yeah, and I've heard some physicians talk about that as well. That and we've heard that from the caregivers that we support. If the isolation over the past year, the person that they're supporting has progressed or decompensated over the year. So absolutely.
Then, from the point of view of demography, if you think of smaller families, I have no siblings, and the displacement of people or the disbursement of people over Canada or the world, different cities where they work, and your mother is living in Burlington and you are working in Ottawa, and maybe you have a lot of duties there, maybe you have a spouse who is disabled, putting everything together, it's not such an easy thing, is it?
No, it's tough. I mean, being a caregiver for any disability or challenge is tough, and trying to maintain your normal daily activities. And it's something that we're at the Dementia Society, we're always trying to figure out how we can meet our clients' needs. So staying social can be through many ways. It could be through a phone call, and maybe that's every day, or maybe that's every week, if you're supporting someone at a distance. Maybe that's a video call. Maybe that's a letter. We've recently put together an activity, a weekly activity schedule as a template for an example of what someone living with dementia could do for the entire week to try to help figure out those meaningful and purposeful activities, from engaging in, maybe a morning prayer, or getting into maybe basket weaving or some folding clothes, but trying to help to get into a routine and to engage in activities that give purpose and meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I would normally ask you about your vision, but I think you stated it very clearly. I'll go over to you, Namrata.
No. I think the vision is very clear. They want to support families where the caregivers and people with dementia have support, and to the coaches and through aids like activity booklets, through trainings, through connections, through stories. And I follow them on Eventbrite, so they definitely have lots of events that are coming. So it's a great, like, they have every week some or the other event, and it's just delightful to see the breadth and the length of things that they have. So it's excellent. And my question to you is, given that your vision is to support and be proactive, what are the challenges and what are the opportunities for you within those challenges?
Well, the when COVID happened, we pivoted everything to virtually, um, and that was successful, and it meted a need, but it also showed some gaps. So, looking at the data, we went from 4 webinars in a year pre-COVID to last year we had 70 webinars. And so we tried to have topics that were pertinent and to help inform our community. So that was successful. We were able to expand our reach. In terms of our social and recreational programs, so we have exercise classes that were in person and now are virtual. We had art classes that were in person and now virtual, and music programs. So initially, we put out some videos so that people could participate in the programs that they previously did in person on demand. And so they could be at home and watch the exercise class or the art class and follow along at home. At the beginning of the pandemic, the views on all of these videos were really high. And you could see as the pandemic or the year went carried on, is the views started to drop each month. But our registration and our attendance for our live same program started to increase. So people got comfortable and started to feel more comfortable to engage in an art program over Zoom or an exercise class over Zoom and participate live. So the opportunity is that we can stay connected. We have to adapt, and we can stay connected and engaged over virtually. However, we support a very large geographical area, and many people in Renfrew County don't have access to high quality internet, and so we are missing a lot of people that previously used to attend in person and are waiting for us to return in person because they don't have access to technology or internet. So that is one of the biggest challenges. And so on this Friday, we are opening back up to a support group in the park. And so we'll be physically distanced, bring your own chair, bring your own water, but it's already sold out because we can only have 8 people. But these are people that have been waiting for a year because they can't access our support groups virtually or haven't wanted to. Another opportunity, if I could share, is we're about to launch a program in partnership with an organization called Connected Canadians, where and Connected Canadians is a nonprofit that helps has a focus on digital literacy, so teaching people how to use technology as adults and seniors in the age that we're in. So what we're working on that with Connected Canadians through a CABI grant, Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation, is we're figuring out the name. So the name is boring right now, but a tablet lending program for people living with dementia. And this will be a data-enabled tablet. So for someone who doesn't have access to technology, we're going to lend them a tablet. They're going to get one-on-one digital literacy training support from Connected Canadians, who are experts. and then have support from a dementia care coach. So we've done the training to Connected Canadians so that they are dementia aware and dementia inclusive. They're the expert in digital lit, work together so that someone who hasn't had access to virtual programs now can. And maybe that is they have access to our programs, or maybe they're now are able to call their family member in BC and have a video call with a nephew or a niece or a son or a daughter that they previously couldn't.
Thank you. What advice do you have for a company like ours?
That's a great question. So I think the advice or the question that I always ask myself are, what do our clients need? And I think the advice is just always talking to whoever your client or your customer is, and what is their unmet need, and how can you fill that gap? Because we may think that we know what the answer is, but maybe it's not what your client or your customer wants.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this popular phrase that is becoming more popular in healthcare, whatnot, is co-design or co-creation. And so how can you to co-create or co-design your solution or your service
Thank you.
And Dean, you guys do an excellent job at what you do. And I'm sure many people know about your organization. But if people want to find you, what's the best way to reach out to you and find your company?
That's so the best way to reach out to us is our website. It's dementiahelp.ca. We are on Twitter, we are on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram. And you can find our handles on our website. I don't know them off by heart. I'm a bad director here. But the best way is to go to our website, and we're happy to help support. You can get connected and chat live to a dementia care coach on our website. Yeah, we're here to help. And yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is very educational for me, honestly. And Paul and Dean, thank you. I was mostly listening. I think this is one of the rare podcasts where I'm just on the back seat. So thank you for educating me. And I hope our listeners feel the same ways. And I really, really appreciate your nonprofit and such nonprofits which really make a difference, an actual difference in lives of many. So thank you so much for doing what you do. I wish you the best, and I wish we can support each other along the journey. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me, and maybe one day I'll participate in one of your educational programs.
Sure. Why not?
Paul, I was going to say the class that I remember the most from my undergrad of kinesiology was history of rock and roll, so that's why I brought it up. So,
So
if you're doing that, I'll sign up.
Good.
that's perfect. Awesome. So thank you again. Thank you so much.